how adoption has impacted my life and why I would consider myself an adoption advocate. It's something that I'm definitely passionate about, and so I don't know, a lot of you already know my story. I was actually adopted at birth, and adoption has been woven into my life in a couple of different ways. So I was adopted at birth and grew up with my sister Tiffany, who was adopted as well. And, you know, I think for everyone, everyone's story of adoption is different. And so my story is that my parents were not able to have children, and they had such a desire in their heart to have a family that adoption made a way for them. And so I was adopted. And when I was adopted, I think my earliest memory of knowing I was adopted was in a car ride with my mom. And she tells the story that I asked the question because I was very inquisitive as a child and also as an adult. I just said, "Did I come out of your tummy?" And she said, "No, you didn't come out of my tummy. Your mom had you, you came out of her tummy, and she wasn't able to take care of you, and she asked that I would. And so I wasn't able to have babies out of my tummy, and so I got to be your mom." And so for me, being adopted has always been, and this may sound kind of silly, but I just felt like I was always a little extra special because my parents really wanted me. So I'm curious if you're adopted. Comment or message down below, or if you've ever been curious about adopting or have kind of felt that desire within your heart to adopt. I'd love to know if you comment down below. So one of the things that was really cool about being adopted is that so my dad and I, my adopted dad, Brian, we would go out, and I remember one specific memory. We were walking through the mall. He ran into someone he knew, and they just said, "Oh my goodness, that's clearly your daughter. Wow, you guys look so much alike." And I remember just kind of chuckling, and you know, it was kind of almost like this inside joke because we knew we were not blood related, and yet people would say that we looked alike. The other thing was birthdays. So I was born on April 28th, and my dad's dad, so my grandpa Volden, was born on April 28th. And when he turned 80 years old, I turned 8 on the same day. And they had this awesome backyard barbecue party in Penticton, BC. I clearly remember people were dressed up, and it was this really fun time, and it was a special memory because I was 8, my grandpa was 80. My cousin Elaine shares the same birthday on the 28th of April. And then on the other side of my family, my mom's grandma, so my great grandma in Sweden, Gamla Mumu, April 28th was her birthday too. And so it was kind of like this little thing that made me feel even more special because I was connected in having these, you know, birthdays that I got to share with other family members. So I think adoption is opening your heart to the possibility of loving someone like they were your blood related family member. So I'm loving you as though I birthed you. And that came out later in life when I met Antonio, my stepson. And it was almost kind of like a no-brainer. It was easy to open my heart and just say, I'm gonna love him like he's my own. And it's been an incredible gift to grow up and over the years grow as a family and be Antonio's mom. Later on, even a few years later, we adopted Trisha out of foster care. And there again, it was like this moment in your heart where you just feel like, it's like your heart is being stretched. Your heart's being stretched to the possibility of loving another human And I'm so thankful that adoption has played such a huge part in my world. So I'm gonna continue, so stay tuned if you're curious about more of how adoption has impacted my life. I'm gonna introduce you to a few special people in my world, and that's Adoption Story Part 1. Thanks for listening. I've had conversations come about because of the adoption video Part 1. And so I wanted to title this video Adoption and Drama, because everybody's story is different. And there are a few things that came to mind that I wanted to share with everyone. And so first thing is there are a couple different ways that adoptions come about. And so my adoption was a private adoption through the government of Canada. And there's also private adoption through adoption agencies, and there's also open adoptions. And so depending on who you talk to, you're going to hear different stories from everyone because they're very different experiences. And so for me, my adoption was private, and that meant that until the time I was 18 years old, I was not allowed to have any identifying information shared with me about my biological family. And the records were sealed. You are born, given a birth certificate, and you're actually given a birth name. And then when you're adopted, you are issued a whole new birth certificate. And so new name, obviously your adoptive parents are noted on that birth certificate. And so my parents had always been really supportive and told me that I was adopted from a young age. If you watch video number 1, I was 3. And my mom corrected me. When I asked the question, did I come out of your tummy? She was so shocked by the question that she actually tried to, she said, well, let's talk about it later. And my response was, you mean you don't know? And she laughs because she said that was like one of the funniest things that we ever talked about in the car. She also shared that, there definitely are people who meant well and had opinions. And so there were people who questioned my parents for being honest with me about telling Tiffany and I that we were adopted, and I alluded to the fact that maybe they shouldn't have told us. But oh my goodness, I was telling my mom, I'm so glad that they were honest with us, that they told us we were adopted from a young age, because I remember, like, how many of you remember watching Maury Povich or Sally Jesse Raphael? Do you remember that? I'm dating myself now. And people would get this like shock on national television. And oh my goodness, I'm so thankful that I never had that moment. Like, that would have been devastating for me. Okay, so a couple things. Frustrations about being adopted. Number 1 is that when you go to any kind of doctor, they ask for medical records, medical history. And one of the most frustrating things was I had to put unknown. So that was something that caused some anxiety in me, was what if there's like some, heart disease in my family history, or I have no idea. So I remember being so frustrated when I was filling out medical documents and just having to put unknown adopted. And another part of that was that that sense of wondering if I looked like anyone. Like, those families where they all look alike, like you clearly know that you look at the parents, you look at the kids, you're like, they look alike. And so in my family, on my mom's side, all of their hands look the same. So like my mom's hands, my aunt, my Aunt Lily, my Aunt Marita, and then my grandma, like all their hands kind of look alike. And I just remember always wondering, like, do my hands look like someone's? That was something that I always wondered. Anxiety would come in large group settings, like big ones. When I went to, I remember growing up in Vancouver, BC, we went to the P&E, or, similar to like the Puyallup Fair or Expo 86 in Vancouver. And I remember being in large crowds of people and in a sea of faces, kind of looking around and wondering like if there was someone that maybe I was related to that was there. When someone says, "Oh my gosh, you look so much like so-and-so," for me, being someone that was adopted and knew it, I wondered who they were and wondered like, could we be related? Like, do I have a twin? Obviously I'd watched too much TV. But that was something that definitely, I think, did cause some anxiety for me. And then, I met my biological family, and that's a whole other separate video that will continue the conversation. But one of the things is like, what do you call them? Because you meet these people and you're meeting them for the very first time. So they're technically strangers, yet they're not. When you talk on the phone, they kind of like, you sound like them. Like my voice definitely sounded like my birth mom, Jane. When I heard her on the phone, it was amazing. And crazy all at the same time. And so I call her Jane. She's not my mom, but she is. She's my biological mom. So do you call her Jane or do you call her mom? Some of those things came up that would have never really thought about. What else? Yeah, so there's different things that as an adoptee, there's just some different things. And like I said, this is my story, and depending on the experience, it varies for everyone. So, what are you saying? I'm hitting them on the head. Okay, so that's my sister Tiff. I absolutely feel like the urgency in my heart started as I got older. I wanted to meet my biological family just to thank them. Like, thank you for life. Thank you to my birth mom for loving me enough to be willing to sacrifice and carry me and to give me an opportunity for a better life that she didn't feel she could give me. And so there was really something in my heart where I wanted to find them just to say thank you and to make sure they were okay. And that experience was absolutely a gift. And so what else?